There's no such thing as a
It's
limited
just
nuclear war.
this
A
is
tactical
just
nuclear weapon cannot be used
bombastic.
in isolation. So if we were to do these war plans, we're committing suicide. That's where we are today. This is the danger of what the Trump administration has done. There are ramifications. And I just want people to understand, as we speak, and I've been warning about this a long time. I know there's haters out there. Scott's been crying wolf forever. There's no nuclear weapons. There's no nuclear danger. As we speak, the United States is redoing its nuclear war plans so that early on in any potential conflict with China and Russia, we would have no choice but to liberally use. That means not just once, we're going to sprinkle them around, tactical nuclear weapons to compensate for the fact that we have no conventional weapons capable of fighting a peer level opponent like China and Russia. That's where we are. This war in Iran is making the world a far more dangerous place.
Everyone keeps asking what happens if the next war begins, but almost nobody is asking a much bigger question. What happens if the world's strongest military isn't actually prepared for it? Former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter argues that the greatest danger isn't simply another conflict. He believes military shortages, changing alliances, and shifting global power could reshape future wars in ways most people aren't expecting. Whether you agree or disagree with his conclusions, the questions he raises deserve attention. Let's take a closer look.
I've been saying this for some time. We will run out of ammunition. You know I've been saying this. I've been saying this all along. The ammunition expenditure rates far exceed ammunition replenishment rates. I'm just a simple Marine. But if I'm expending 10 and I can only produce 5, I'm not going to catch up. And eventually I'm going to run out of ammunition, and I'm not going to be able to build enough ammunition to replace. Simple Marine math. And this is the reality that's going on now. Hegseth and company seem to be fudging. In West Point, they would call it quibbling. Quibbling. It's not quite a lie, but it's not quite the truth either. You know what the truth is, but you're quibbling. You're saying something that isn't a lie, but it's not the truth. And that could get you kicked out of West Point as an honor code violation. Hegseth is quibbling. Because one of the way they're doing these numbers is that they're saying that the war with Iran is unsustainable, that we've run out of ammunition, therefore we cannot continue the campaign. And this is correct, except for a very important caveat. What if the Department of War, in order to continue the campaign against Iran, decided to draw down war reserve stocks in the Pacific and in Europe to levels that made it impossible for the United States to fight a war with China or Russia? Now, if you did this, if you were to do this, you could sustain the campaign against Iran until you literally run out of ammunition. Right now, we have run out of ammunition from a qualitative standpoint, meaning that the ammunition allocated for Middle Eastern conflict is gone, finished. There is no more left. But if we want to rob Peter to pay Paul, we could continue this. But here comes the dangerous part. And this is what people need to reflect on, just how utterly stupid and dangerously stupid Pete Hegseth is and his bosses. As we speak, the Pentagon is redoing the nuclear posture of the United States, nuclear posture policies, to include nuclear employment plans. These are very important documents. Why? Well, we now have to envision a war with China where we don't have enough ammunition to fight China. We now have to envision a war with Russia where we don't have enough ammunition to fight Russia. You remember Christopher Donahue, the recent commander of U.S. forces in Europe? I think it was January of last year. He came out and he said, Kaliningrad's only 47 miles. Wow, we could take it out tomorrow. We've been planning this. We're ready for it. We can do this. We got this in the bag. Well, no. First of all, the planning that he was done was predicated on an AI program called Maven. Maven was used to attack Iran, and we now know that Maven doesn't work because Maven just attacks the wrong things. It's stupid. So he was wrong. But let's say Maven did work. The ammunition necessary for Maven to succeed no longer exists. It's been taken away to the Middle East, thanks to Pete Hegseth. So now, if we were going to fight the Russians, we would have to, first of all, we would run out of ammunition very quickly, which means then we need to have something to replace it. And so now new war plans are being written as we speak that talk about the liberal use of tactical nuclear weapons.
Most discussions about modern warfare focus on strategy, technology, or battlefield tactics. But Scott Ritter argues that the real problem begins much earlier with production. He believes ammunition is being consumed faster than it can be replaced, creating long-term pressures that could influence military planning far beyond the current conflict. That concern becomes the foundation for everything else discussed in this interview.
Well, Scott, that's sort of like Armageddon, like you're being irresponsible. Am I? Am I being irresponsible? Because if we don't have arms control, these nuclear war plans will be implemented because Donald Trump isn't wise enough to back away from bad policy options, especially with China. He's doubled down on the Pacific. Right now, Taiwan is openly bragging about secret military relationships with the United States. And China's going, what? And at some point in time, they might get in a shooting match. When they do, China will crush Taiwan. And then when that happens, the United States will kick in with a war plan because we can't just sit back and do nothing. And that war plan will now incorporate liberal use of tactical nuclear weapons early on, preemptively. This is where we're at. I mean, I don't know how much louder I need to scream. I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm just starting to laugh about it because of the inevitability of our demise. It's not a matter of, if, it's a matter of when, because we're too stupid to do anything about this. I mean, to be honest, there is a solution. It's called the vote. I just did a rant on YouTube. I encourage people to go watch it. I said, what would Donnie do? That's the name of the rant. Donnie, of course, being not Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of the United States, but Donnie. Donnie from The Apprentice. He used to have a show called The Apprentice, and Donnie would bring people together and have them do things. And when they screwed up, he'd turn to them and say, you're fired. So now we have to ask ourselves, what would Donnie do when confronted with the incompetence of Donald Trump? And we know what the answer is. You're fired. And if we don't fire him and everybody else affiliated with him and everybody else thinking it's a good idea to have a new nuclear posture plan that uses the liberal use of tactical nuclear weapons early on in the conflict, if we don't fire them, we're going to die.
Ritter takes his argument a step further. He contends that if conventional military capabilities become insufficient, planners may increasingly consider alternative forms of deterrence, including tactical nuclear options. That's his interpretation of where current trends could lead, not an established prediction, but it's the central warning that shapes the rest of his analysis.
Words don't kill people normally. They could lead to policies that kill people. But saying you're going to destroy Iran and destroying Iran are two totally different things. As you've pointed out, the weapons shortage that exists in the United States has led to different mechanisms of employing kinetic violence against Iran. We are running very short of long-range standoff weapons delivered by aircraft. And so what we've had to do with aircraft is we use what are called JDAMs, which are these the bombs with the satellite guidance packages on them that allow for gliding. So if you drop it at a fairly high altitude, the bomb can glide in over defined space and strike a target. You don't go very deep with this because you have to keep the airplane standing off from air defense. We use HIMARS, which is the GLMRS munition. We use ATACMS. Then we use the precision strike munition. My understanding is that we're all but out of precision strike munitions. I think there are only 90 to begin with. We fired 80 as of last month, and there's 10 left. We can't do much with 10 weapons. ATACMS, we've basically run the supply dry. We have to strip ATACMS away from South Korea and from Europe. And as soon as we do that, then we lose, whatever potential we had. We know there's not much potential because the Ukrainians use ATACMS and HIMARS against the Russians, and the Russians have figured out how to jam the GPS signal and how to spoof the inertial guidance and basically disrupt these attacks so that the percentage of success is actually very low. But Iran, may or may not have the spoofing capability. I don't know, what the battle damage is being done to Iran. My guess is probably Russia shared the ability to deal with HIMARS and ATACMS, and the Iranians are implementing those measures as well. But when we're using them because we don't have enough standoff weapons, we've depleted our Tomahawk stock. So we are bombing basically the western edge and southern edge of Iran with what we have, but we can't go deep. Iran has missiles that have greater range than our missiles. which means that Iran can operate from a strategic depth that we can't reach with the available weaponry, and they can punish, all of the Gulf Arab nations, and they can strike deeper into Jordan. So, what you've described is proof positive that we simply can't have a broader war against Iran, that we've maxed out on our combat potential. We lack the capacity to meaningfully project power in a sustainable fashion into the Iranian strategic depth. Meanwhile, Iran continues to be able to threaten the totality of the strategic depth of the United States and our allies in the region.
According to Ritter, military strength isn't measured only by the number of weapons available today. It's also about how long a country can sustain a conflict and project power over time. He argues that when one side faces growing logistical constraints while another maintains strategic depth, the balance of power can begin to shift in unexpected ways. Throughout this interview, Scott Ritter returns to one central argument. He believes modern wars are no longer decided by military strength alone, but by industrial capacity, logistics, and the ability to sustain a prolonged conflict. Whether history ultimately proves his analysis right or wrong, the broader question remains: what happens when major powers can no longer rely on conventional military advantages? If you found this discussion thought-provoking, let us know your perspective in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth interviews and geopolitical analysis.